Conservation Commission meeting on January 28th, 2025. I'll do a quick roll call. Commissioner Collins is not here. Commissioner Martinez is also not here. Commissioner Alminas here. Commissioner Miller
Here.
Commissioner Jones
Here.
Commissioner Ryan. He's coming. Oh. Frank, can you hear us? Hey, Frank. I think you're muted. Just doing a quick roll call.
Now audio's on, present.
All right. And Commissioner Von Jordan here. All right. We have two items tonight. The first is a certificate of compliance for the property known as 149 Winterset Drive. And I believe Mr. Thomas Kulina was going to be here to present on behalf of a property being sold. It doesn't look like he's here right now, so we can skip over that. Maybe he shows up when we're done, and we'll go over to the second item, which is the Upper Van Horn improvement project to the dam. We've got Adrian Dunk, Jen Burke, and Laura Walsh. See, you guys are all here. How you doing? You guys want to give us the update?
Sure. Thanks for having us, Commission. We're excited to present this project to you. It's been we've been working on it for quite some time now. We received a dam and seawall grant. Again, for those who don't know, I'm Laura Walsh, project manager for the Park Department. We received a dam and seawall grant to get into the design and permitting and construction documents to renovate the Upper Van Horn Dam, which is the dam you're driving over when you pass Van Horn on Armory Street. We had a few delays with this project due to COVID and when the grant was awarded to us. And then in the middle of it, MEPA changed some of their permitting process. So we're still in the process of doing the design and doing the outreach to the appropriate agencies and neighborhoods and everyone there for that MEPA permitting process. And I'll let Jen and Adrian talk a bit more about that and the specifics. So we're in the beginning stages of this project, just getting the design and permitting done. The next phases would be construction documents and then construction, and all of that is dependent on availability of grant funding for us to take that on. So that's kind of a broad overview of that. We've been doing outreach with the neighborhoods and other agencies. So we're now coming to give the overview to you guys as well and keep you informed on how the project is progressing. So with that, I'll turn it over to Adrian and Jen. I'm not sure who's starting.
Great. Well, thank you, Laura, for the intro, and thank you for hearing us tonight informally. We're still early in the process, as Laura said, but we're in the middle of MEPA, so we've done an expanded environmental notification form, and we're close to submitting a single environmental impact report with MEPA. And as part of that process, the MEPA reviewers had asked us to do, because of the size of the project and some of the elements, they'd asked us to do some additional outreach and to also do some pre-MEPA filing coordination with different state agencies. And then they also asked us to do some early outreach with the Concom because of some of the issues we have that are kind of unique to the project. City of Springfield's got a bunch of dams, and GZA has been working on a lot of them with Laura over the years. We were involved in the Lower Van Horn Dam Rehab project that was just downstream. And this one, again, every one of the dams has their own unique settings. So we'll just talk a little bit about some of the challenges we've had with this project tonight. And, our goal here is just to kind of give you guys an intro to the program we're looking at and to also seek some input on some of those challenges. Adrian, if you could go to the next slide.
Yep.
All right. So I kind of already talked about this. So we're just going to do a project overview and then talk a little bit about where we are in the process regulatory wise, and then some of those items that we want to go over with you relative to fisheries habitat, some of the limited project provisions, and also the stormwater standards and how they may apply to this project. So as Laura mentioned, the dam actually is the embankment that you see when you're going across Armory Street. It's kind of hidden because it is really steep and also because there's a lot of trees on it. So the dam or the Armory Street embankment really forms this impoundment of Upper Van Horn Reservoir Dam and separates that from the lower reservoir. And both of these are immediately upstream of Bay State Medical Center. So Lower Van Horn's a larger dam and it's a higher hazard dam. So that was the one the city needed to work on first. So this is the follow-up to the work that's been done on Lower Van Horn, kind of working our way upstream. This dam's also registered and labeled as being in poor condition by the Office of Dam Safety currently. So the Office of Dam Safety has a dam safety order out with the city requiring them to bring the dam back into good condition. And so that's what we're in the process of now. It's a multi-year, multi-step process, and we're kind of at the early stages still. Next, Adrian. So as you can see here, you can see the Armory Street embankment and you can see all those trees. At the end of the day, we need this dam to look a lot more like the downstream dam where you see everything returned to turf. So the purpose of this project is really to get this dam to be compliant with modern dam safety engineering practices and the dam safety regulations and the order that has been issued by the Office of Dam Safety. The project's needed to reduce risks to downstream life and property, especially with having Bay State Medical Center downstream. This is an important project to improve public safety. So, we have that risk of failure of the dam, and that would put public safety at risk. We also want to make sure that the city is able to preserve the reservoir for recreation and for all of the ecological habitat and benefits that it's providing in the natural environment. And as part of this project, it's also important to provide improved access to allow for better future inspection and operation and maintenance of the dam. Right now, there's no way to access the downstream slope, and we can show you kind of some of the issues that are there that make this difficult for maintenance currently. Next, Adrian. So there's a lot of issues at this dam. This dam has kind of all the issues you don't want to see on an embankment dam. It has very steep slopes that are currently covered with mature vegetation. So trees, shrubs, there's been a lot of deadwood and tree fall on the dam. There's trees currently that have fallen that are currently across the spillway. And that's the top right photo is Adrian's showing. And there's really just no safe or easy way to access for maintenance of that spillway. The spillway itself, the chute was constructed in multiple sections, and some of those sections are sliding relative to each other. So there's gaps in that, and it needs to be replaced at this point. The top left photo shows an area that used to be a piped connection from a head wall down to Lower Van Horn Reservoir. Those pipe connections have failed over time. They're clay. They're actually still in this area, but now there's an erosion gully, and that's at the downstream toe of the dam. Because the dam is so steep and because there's been drainage system failures, there's scour holes, which is the bottom left, and also erosion gullies as those pipes have continued to fail over time. This dam was built in the 1850s. It had a rehab done in the 1950s, probably post this post-55 flood era. And even though that work was done to try to modernize it, that was more than 50 years ago at this point. We're looking at 70 plus years ago since there's been any significant rehabilitation or restoration. Some of these issues relative to the steep slopes and the drainage failures have led to some cracking and kind of safety issues along the sidewalk. We actually just worked with the city for an emergency repair on the sidewalk here. in that area that's shown. And then that bottom right photo just shows some of the animal burrows. That's like a 12+ inch animal burrow, which again, those are going into the structure of the dam. So the dam has issues with erosion, with seepage. It doesn't meet dam safety requirements for seepage or stability. There's issues with concrete condition. Right now, there's no way of drawing down the impoundment in an emergency or for maintenance. Dams are required to have a means of doing that according to modern dam safety standards. So that's another issue that needs to be addressed as part of the rehabilitation. Next, Adrian. And again, this is just the Massachusetts Office of Dam Safety Policy on Trees on Dams says that they require that earthen embankment dams be maintained free of the existence of trees and woody growth. And that's for the entire dam surface, as well as a buffer upstream and downstream. And that's part of, that's the major factor that led to Lower Van Horn looking like it does now, which I have a pre and a post photo on the next slide, I think, of that. So before the repairs, Lower Van Horn was also they were built in a similar timeline, and they had a lot of similar issues, very steep embankments, mature trees, erosion gullies, some issues with drainage and runoff. And that's a before and after repairs. And that's kind of just, it's a good vision of where we need to get to. The main difference being that we have Armory Street on top of the upper dam versus the lower dam where it's just an access route. Next. So right as it's conceptualized now, there's a series of improvements for this dam rehabilitation. First, we need to remove all of the trees and woody vegetation and develop a turf surface. Because the dam doesn't meet stability and seepage requirements, it actually needs to have mass added to it, so weight added to it, but it also needs to have those slopes, the slopes lessened, so made more shallow. So there would be regrading for the upstream and downstream slopes. To be sensitive to the resources, we tried to look at areas where we could use rock fill because that adds more weight and also is stable at a steeper slope, so it would have less impacts pushing out towards areas where there may be BVW. It does also require a stability berm and tow drains as part of the project, as well as addition of riprap on portions of the slope, and that's for slope protection, but it also is to protect against freeze-thaw action and kind of that normal movement of water where you can see scarping or issues like that. And then also repairing the erosion scars and removing and repairing animal burrows as part of the work. The spillway chute would need to be replaced at this point. It's outlived its lifespan, and because of the way it's failed, it's not really easy to go back and try to patch or repair that. The project would also include drainage system replacement and repairs, because basically all of the pipes that are coming off the street line out onto the surface of the dam have failed at this point and are causing erosion or scour or both. And adding new controlled outlet points. We don't want to just repeat the past and put those discharges back out onto the slope of the dam. It would also include a new siphon for drawdown, and then repairing and removing a former outlet. So over on the left side of the drawing, there's that walking trail. If you ever walk along between Upper Van Horn and Lower Van Horn, there's kind of a walking trail through the woods, and there's actually an old outlet to the pond along that alignment, and that's no longer needed. So we'd be proposing to remove that, at least through the extent that goes through the dam. And then finally, providing new maintenance access, having a way to get to both the upstream and downstream areas so that they can maintain the dam easier. And also it'll provide for access in the event of an emergency as well. And then finally, improvements along the roadway, with the roadway itself, the surfacing, the guardrails, the sidewalks, new safety fencing, and also improvements to lighting. And that was something that came out of some of the community meetings with the neighborhood councils, is that everyone seemed to ask about lighting and the need for better lighting. There's pretty limited, there's kind of a few ornamental structures that are along there. So that was something that we added based on comments from the neighborhood and trying to be sensitive to other requests as part of the project. So I'm going to turn it over to Adrian, who's going to talk a little bit about the resources. I should talk about this one first. Sorry about that. So this is just kind of gives you an idea of the types of improvements. So Armory Street's at the center, Upper Van Horn, the upstream, is on the left, Lower Van Horn is on the right. So the dashed line is the current slope. So you can see they're pretty steep. They're on the order of 1 vertical to 2 horizontal. And we'd be proposing to lessen those slopes. So taking those out to 3-on-1, the addition of a stability berm on both the upstream and downstream sides of the dam. And then because of using the rock, we can go with a steeper slope on that downstream most area to try to limit impacts to BBW in that area. Upstream, it's just bank. Downstream did have BBW. And it is a large, it looks like a large change to the dam, but that's because the current dam was, it was built and designed in the 1850s, and it doesn't meet existing dam safety criteria. And part of those stability berms is to add weight to the dam, which adds stability. Now I'll turn it over to Adrian, who's going to talk a little bit about where we are in the process and some of the items we're looking for input on.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah. So for these projects, it is a long haul. So we did start, as Laura said, we started the MEPA process with environmental justice outreach as a pre-filing activity. And then we filed our expanded environmental notification form back in the summer and fall of 2022. We received feedback on that, and we've been acting on that feedback. So we are still in the MEPA process and preparing our single environmental impact report, which means that coming up here in 2025, we are looking to come before you all with a notice of intent. This project will also require a Section 401 water quality certification due to dredging and fill in the land underwater, which is primarily Upper Van Horn, but some of Lower Van Horn. We'll need an Army Corps authorization under Section 404 and also an Office of Dam Safety, Chapter 253 Dam Safety Permit. And then eventually it will go to construction. That will be dependent on funding, as there'll be additional grant awards that the city will have to go through, and then bidding the project. So we are still here in column 2, but we are making progress towards construction. There were 3 topics in the expanded environmental notification form that the DEP specifically called out as areas for us to look into more carefully, and specifically to talk to you all or the 401 office, Mass Wildlife, essentially to consult on. And so we do want to bring those up to you tonight. We don't want you to be surprised when you get a notice of intent about them. We want you to know kind of the thought that's gone into these decisions, and also if you have input now, and we can avoid delays and rework later. We're always happy to use the city's money and time efficiently on these projects. So the first is that Upper Van Horn will need to be drawn down to facilitate this work. So the upper reservoir will only have a very small residual pool, and that is due to the depth of the reservoir to provide for worker safety, but it also improves the safety of the dam during construction, and it results in a better constructed dam product to be able to work in the dry. So the reservoir will be drawn down. We did talk to Mass Wildlife about this, and their position on it is that there is a short-term adverse effect to the fish, but there's a long-term benefit of saving the reservoir and saving the fisheries habitat, and that the fish population will rebound over time. We know that there are fish in the reservoir. We know people enjoy recreating and fishing there, but there are no rare species in the reservoir. They did remind us that fish salvaging and relocating, so going out there and scooping the fish up and moving them to Lower Van Horn or any other pond in the city, is actually prohibited in Massachusetts because of the potential to spread disease. They requested that we draw the pond down slowly, which has been incorporated into the design. That's no problem. And we talked about restocking the pond, like at what happened at Water Shops Pond, but they felt like that wasn't recommended here, with the proximity of Lower Van Horn and bird populations, that the fish would repopulate over time in Upper Van Horn. So we did want to run this by you, so you're not all surprised when we file a notice of intent. And certainly if there's other opinions from the Concom or thoughts on how we can be protective, we're open to discussion tonight, or if you have a thought, tonight in the middle of the night, you're always welcome to reach out to us.
And I think it's good too to point out how like different dam removal or dam removals are different and dam rehabs are different. So when we did Lower Van Horn is an interesting one because it's a flood control dam. So it's actually maintained pretty low all the time. So there wasn't much to do in terms of water level changes during the project. Whereas Water Shops that the city just went through, obviously that had a huge drawdown associated with it. It did still have residual pool. So a lot of it depends on the setting, and that's what's kind of been considered through this process because it is a very tall dam, and Upper Van Horn Reservoir is so deep, it's like 20 feet deep in places. So the other options would have been things like having full height cofferdams, which Office of Dam Safety has really become adverse to from a risk perspective. So they've asked engineers not to consider that as part of the work. So I just wanted to mention that we've kind of thought about those things as we've gone along, and that was kind of how the project was conceived, is based on this particular setting, and also based on some of those conversations or the conversation with Mass Wildlife.
Yeah.
I'm actually really surprised that they don't recommend fish stocking or restocking afterwards. The best of my knowledge is really not there is a fish population in there, but it doesn't seem to be very, very high. So I know after the drawdown, it might be even lower. So that's surprising that they wouldn't recommend that.
We were a little surprised by that too, because we asked, we offered, we said, do you want us to restock?
Offered a couple times.
Yeah, I just wouldn't. It especially being 20 feet deep too. It's deeper than lower than a lot of the other ponds. So that's well.
Did they say about how long it would take for it to rebound over time?
No, they didn't give a timeline. They just said they would expect it to come back, and so let nature take its course, essentially.
Yeah. But I guess I also didn't realize rebuilt in the 1950s, so I guess it's due to be redone, huh?
It's been a long haul, and and I think that I've never seen the reports, but I think it may have overtopped, or they had some issue in that 55. A lot of dams in New England overtopped during that 55 flood. It was quite the event. So.
Yeah, pretty much all of our dams need significant work, and the city has been chipping away at them. Obviously, with the higher hazard dams getting done first, with the Lower Van Horn Dam, and then the rebuild of the Water Shops Dam. So Upper Van Horn and Breck would be the next two, and then Porter Lake Dam as well is in there. So they're all equally important. and we chip away at them as funding is available.
Okay, excellent.
All right. You'll have to stick with me through this next one. It's a topic that I enjoy, but I would forgive everyone else for maybe not being a like a limited project fan, a limited project nerd. We will be filing the project as a limited project, specifically under 310 CMR 10.533I. And this allows for work on dams and their appurtenant works. So that includes all of the structures and features that are on the dam itself, including culverts, stormwater drainage, the spillway. And we will be needing to use the limited project because while we will be designing the project to meet the performance standards the best we can't fully meet all of the performance standards. So we can't necessarily meet alteration, square footage sizes of alteration, or linear feet of bank, things like that. We will be working to, but just it's such a large project that the limited project provisions are specifically designed to give conservation commissions the authority and autonomy to allow important projects such as dam safety projects, utility projects, to proceed when we can't quite meet all of the performance standards. So I would anticipate that when we file, we will receive a comment from DEP that says, just because the limited project box is checked, the proponent still has to meet those standards to the extent practicable. And we will be, and we'll demonstrate that in our filing. But we do want you to know that ahead of time. Specifically, an item that will be challenging is this culvert that Jen talked about that has failed over time. So up along Armory Street, my mouse likes to go to sleep. There we go. There's this small wetland here's Armory Street in the background. And there's this small depressional wetland, and there's a head wall in it. And this head wall has a 6-inch diameter pipe, clay pipe, that carries the water down to Lower Van Horn Reservoir. This makes this a BVW technically with a bank. It's regulated. We are not trying to argue that it's not, but it is kind of a low quality wetland with a culvert. You can see this culvert's here. It's failed, so there's erosion on top of it. Here's some of the pipe. Again, here's some of the pipe. There's erosion in between. The pipe's coming out of the ground. To comply with dam safety rules, we cannot have this open flowing water on the dam surface. We have to put it back in the culvert where it was supposed to be. We will be using a larger than 6-inch diameter culvert, but the flow has to go back in a culvert for safety. So that is part of the project proposal. The head wall will be slightly relocated so that it better captures the flow. Right now it's perched. It's just not correctly placed. So the culvert head wall will be moved and a new culvert will be installed to convey that flow. But this will not be able to comply with the stream crossing standard. So that's one element of the project that will require this limited project provision. To meet the stream crossing standards for a bank of this size and for this length along the dam, we would actually really need this really enormous crossing. It would have to be like a 20-foot wide culvert and like 16 feet wide and 20 feet high, like a whole tunnel. And again, it's not really an appropriate application of the stream crossing standards here because we don't have a stream upstream and downstream. We're not preserving and connecting high quality habitat. Here we're trying to restore this to its design feature, which is a stormwater fed wetland with a pipe conveying flow down to the Lower Van Horn Reservoir So we'll have an improvement, a larger pipe, but we will be leaning on the components of the regulations that allow for engineering and safety provisions to override the stream crossing standards. Again, we just can't have open flowing water on a dam embankment. That's part of this whole project, is to stop the erosion of the dam. And then finally, the stormwater standards is always, as a non-engineer, I'm an ecologist, I think the stormwater standards is always a tricky part of the project. Armory Street has stormwater management systems in it. They are currently outletting on the face of the dam, causing erosion. So as part of this project, as Jen said, those will be replaced. We'll be replacing and adding new catch basins. They will have deep sump hooded catch basins, which is an improvement. That does allow for some TSS removal. And then we'll be rerouting the under road collection system with manholes for access and maintenance. So it will be able to be maintained in a better condition than currently. The system doesn't allow for routine maintenance. And then we'll be relocating the outlets to avoid dam embankment erosion. So that's better for dam safety, but it's also better for water quality, as we will not be eroding dam material into water bodies. The project will be filed as a redevelopment project because Armory Street exists today, and that's where our impervious cover is. It's limited to the Armory Street component of the project, not the rest of the dam. And the proposed access roads on the dam embankment will be a porous pavement or another porous material. So those will be outside of the stormwater standards. So it's a complicated project. That's why we did want to come before you tonight, so that I'm sure you have questions now and you'll have questions when we file, but at least kind of the wheels can start turning. Because there's a lot of components. We have designed this to meet as many of the components of the Wetlands Protection Act and also the Springfield Ordinance as we can, but we do anticipate that we will need some variances and exemptions to approve the project, just given the existing conditions. And the dams are always tricky because they are right smack dab in the middle of wetlands and water bodies by definition. So you all do know how to get a hold of us, but again, I'm Adrienne, this is my email. We're happy to stay and answer questions tonight, but also, like I said, if you have that moment, hopefully you don't, but if you do in the middle of the night and you're like, what about a natural bottom stream bed? You can feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to provide info.
Gotcha. Would it be possible for you to send me just a copy of this presentation so that I have it for my office?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. And like I said earlier, you know, as we've gone through this process, we've kind of looked at a lot of alternatives and options, and we tried to, you know, try to do our best to minimize impacts. Because the dam is so old and we do have to meet modern dam safety standards, it's definitely a challenge in a tight setting in an urban environment. And it's not something that's in your purview, but we're also thinking about how do we construct this thing. This isn't a quick construction. If you remember how Laura Van Horn water shops were, we need to be sensitive to the hospital, to ambulances, to school buses, and trying to, you know, get this all done in a tight footprint. And we've tried to think about treatment options for stormwater without doing something that's going to make us dig into the dam more than we have to. We know we have to expand the footprint of the dam and add material, but we don't want to disturb any more of the existing dam than we have to during the process. So it's definitely a challenge, and, you know, Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold, so my voice is gone all day. We're trying to, do the best we can, and we're looking for early input as we're working our way through the MIPA process and working on design drawings to get them to the permitting level. So we appreciate your time and in your thoughts on the process.
And just, oh, sorry, just our next step is that we will be filing our single environmental impact report. And so, Adam, you will be receiving a link to that. You'll be BCC'd on an email coming out from probably me. That says,
When should I expect that?
probably at the end of February
Okay.
or mid-March. And it'll say, Dear MIPA distribution list, and it'll have a link. And so that will have the entire single environmental impact report. It's a huge document, but we look at impacts to all Wetlands Protection Act resources, but also, like all wildlife types, soil, geology, traffic, noise.
Yeah. Okay.
So all sorts of good stuff in there, but that will be coming out, and there's a 37-day comment period. After that comes out, it gets published in the Environmental Monitor. So it's a veritable feast of information, but also the Conservation Commission can issue a comment letter if you so wish, that either says, we're aware of this, or we support this project, whatever you wish, or you can stay mum. We would likely be filing the notice of intent after that comment period.
So probably sometime in the spring.
Probably sometime in the spring, yep.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I imagine this is probably going to be a little bit more complicated than even Lower Van Horn and water shops because of the location, because of where you guys are, tight area to work in. So okay.
Yeah, Armory Street is the biggest challenge we have on this project. Not the dam. In some ways it's not the dam. It's Armory Street and everything going on there in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if it looks anything like if the finished product looks anything like the Lower Van Horn, then I'm sure it'll be good and worth it in the end, because the Lower Van Horn looks awesome what you guys did. So
much appreciated. And we have been in contact with Chris Signoli over at DPW on this too, because ultimately it will probably end up, Laura, as a DPW project when it goes to construction because of Armory Street. So DPW will be involved and be commenting.
Yeah, it'll be multi-departmental because capital asset will be involved just due to the dollar amount. Obviously parks, and then DPW as well. So there'll be a lot of people on this one.
It's easier when they're in the middle of a park with nothing on either side.
Right.
This one's definitely the worst of all the worlds combined.
Yeah, well, whichever one happens first, either this one or Breckwood will be a good training ground for the next one, because Breckwood also crosses a street.
Yeah, Breckwood's going to be similar situation, right?
Exactly, yeah. So we're, like I said, we're slowly working on all of the dams, and they're all in different stages. But we keep applying for funding and getting it done that way. So hopefully that dam and seawall grant is available each year, and we do apply each year, but we're not always selected due to whatever the statewide initiatives are, or whatever the governor and the cabinet are looking to fund. So keep chipping away.
Right.
Great. Do you guys have any other questions from the initial review? Like Adrian said, you can always send any other questions via email. Adam has all of our contact info if anything else comes up.
Yeah, I don't have any questions at this time. I'm sure once I start reading through everything I might, but does anybody else from the commission have any questions? No. Brian or Clarence?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I just don't know how to stop sharing, so I don't know if you can kick me off of sharing.
Adam, I have one.
or if I just need to leave.
Hold on a second, I don't think I have, let me see.
I don't have any,
I
like,
have the option to share, I believe, so maybe
I don't have any
share my screen, yeah. I don't-
exit out options.
What, can you click on the share button on your screen, Adrian?
I can, but it only gives me options to share other versions of my screen.
Oh,
Yeah,
But-
and I only have the option to
Well,
share my.
please let us know when we can advocate for restocking, rebounding of the fish. It seems like that should be an option for Springfield.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Frank. I was very surprised after initially reading that. It's really surprising that they wouldn't want to restock a place like that. So, yeah, maybe we could figure something out or talk to somebody. I know a couple people, so. All right,
great.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much for
Well,
having us. We appreciate
you.
it.
yeah, thank you
Thanks
for
for the
coming.
information.
That too. And,
Great.
Great job.
Sure we'll talk soon.
Good
Thank you.
luck. Challenge.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a great
Thank
night.
you. Have a good night.
Welcome.
Have a good night.
You too. Good night.
All right, let me just check to see if the representative from. Oh, no, he's not. Okay. All right, everyone. So that prior item, the certificate of compliance, we'll just have to continue that till next meeting. We'll see, the person's not here that was supposed to be here tonight, so. Yeah, we'll just continue that. And, that was the only other item that we had. So I guess at this time, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting? I'll make a motion to adjourn. All right.
I'll second.
All right, and I'll just call the roll really quick. Commissioner Omias? Yes. Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Ryan? You, Frank? Can you hear us, Frank?
It was a yes. I hope I was heard. Is my volume really low?
Oh, we hear you now. I think you were. Yeah. Okay, and then Commissioner Bonjour? Yes. All right. All right, thank you all for coming.